Hey, welcome to the Next Wave podcast. I'm Matt Wolf. I'm here with Nathan Lanz. And today we're going to talk about probably one of the hottest topics of 2025, and that's the topic of AI agents. Today we're bringing on a special guest, Dmitry Shapiro. He is the CEO of MindStudio, and MindStudio is a tool that makes it insanely easy for you to build your own AI agents. So in this episode, not only are we going to talk about AI agents and what they're useful for, we're going to actually jump into MindStudio with Dmitry and show off him actually building some of these agents in real time and making them work. It's pretty impressive stuff, and I don't want to waste your time, so let's just jump right in with Dmitry. Before we get into talking about MindStudio and all the cool stuff that it can do, let's get a little bit of background on you. I know you and I are practically neighbors. You live maybe 3 miles from me. We're in kind of the same city. You worked at MySpace, you worked at Google, you did all sorts of really, really cool stuff. And you've been sort of in the thick of the AI world for quite a while.
These days, I describe myself as an old nerd. I started writing code in 1984 when I was 14 years old, and I went to see the movie War Games. My high school had 2 Apple IIe computers. And so I spent the rest of my high school years, instead of like being a normal, teenager, in this like computer lab, right? And mostly trying to like write code and cause havoc in whatever, way that I could. And then
Start World War III.
Short of that. Before, founding MindStudio, I spent 4.25 years at Google. Before that, I was the chief technology officer of MySpace Music. This is a joint venture between MySpace and the record labels. So I did that. Before that, I built a venture-backed company called VO Networks, which was one of the major competitors to YouTube in the first 5 years of YouTube's life. Before that, I built a venture-backed cybersecurity company, enterprise software cybersecurity company called Aconics, raised $34 million for Aconics, raised $70 million for VO. Here so far, we've raised $36 million. I've raised $140 some odd million in my career. And then whatever. Before that, I spent 5 years at Fujitsu, another big Japanese company, of building their web team. So I'm an old nerd. I love building products. This is the most fun I've ever had, which I think should say a lot, but wow, what a time to be alive and working on products to be able to leverage these new capabilities. It's crazy.
Well, so now you've got MindStudio, and the big buzzword of 2025 is agents, right? Like everybody's talking about agents. You hear OpenAI and Google and all of these companies basically saying agents. This is what you're going to hear the most about in 2025. And MindStudio, to some degree, is basically a tool that helps you build these agents. But I'm curious, I feel like everybody kind of defines agents differently. Like, how do you define agents? What are you calling what you're building at MindStudio agents? Where do you stand on all that?
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous amount of sensationalism and hype and noise. And so even though we call them agents, we're kind of allergic to the word agent because it's so overloaded.
Yeah, but it's kind of the word that people know, and it's the buzzword right now, right? So,
yeah. I'm not sure what else to call these things. For a while there, we called them workers just to differentiate from agents. The popular definition of it is an AI that can sort of direct itself and do what it needs to do in sort of quite amorphous situation. It has access to tools, and it has a goal, and it goes off and does that. And magically, it's intelligent, and it's able to do that like a human would. And look, as a nerd, I'm excited about that kind of vision, and certainly we're all moving in that direction. But at the same time, we think that's sort of a bit too much autonomy to be just given to AI, and that for most things that you want to do, you generally want to be able to be in more control. You want it to do the heavy lifting and the scaling, but not necessarily to do all the strategy, for example, for you, and choosing what path to take. Right? And you're sort of telling it where to go, and it goes there, rather it takes you for a ride to wherever it is that it decides to go. And so we think of these things as being workflows that you can say, I want to get something done. I want to create something that does something. And well, how would you do that? Well, you'd create a workflow, same way that you would sort of onboard a human to do it. You would explain to this thing, here's what I want you to do. Every weekday morning at 9 a.m., I want you to go and search the web and search these other databases looking for developments and this thing that I care about, right? And you can be quite fuzzy in saying what the thing is, or you can be quite precise. And then if you find that kind of situation, if you find interesting information there, do some thinking, synthesize it, evaluate it from my standpoint, what I want, and then sort of create a nice report for me and sort of nudge me, send me an email, send me a notification, tell me, hey, something just happened in the world that you should know about. I've thought about it for you. Here you go. And you can just set it on a schedule. That's like one of the ways that you can deploy these MindStudio AIs, and it just runs and does that for you. By the way, that's amazing. Like I'll give you an example here. So Google Trends is a really sort of important data set, living data set of what are people searching for? Like, what does the world care about? And more specifically, like, how is that changing over time? Like, what's becoming more popular, what's becoming less popular? So the information is there on Google Trends, but the interface for you to like load it in your browser and like periodically go look at Google Trends, like that takes a lot of work. And so you're going to look at like one or two keywords, but you're certainly not going to look at 100 keywords.
Right.
You certainly wouldn't look at 1,000 keywords. But you see, with a MindStudio AI agent, you can look at 1,000 keywords. And you don't have to do any of it. You just have to go and say to your, when you build the agent, like, this is what I want to look at. It can generate the keywords, or you can generate the keywords, and it can at scale, every day or every hour or every minute, you decide. Go and look at the world and synthesize it and look for those changes you want. If you're trading stocks, that's an unfair advantage.
Right.
Right?
If you're starting companies as well, that's a big thing with like product studios.
It's an unfair advantage in everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so again, before now, like that, how would you do that? But now that's actually really straightforward. You find something, online that you're reading, you're consuming, but it's hard to tell whether that thing is accurate. More and more things are inaccurate, misinformation, disinformation. Now we've got a little button you can press, and like we've got a Chrome extension, and you can have these agents triggered from any web page. And so you can push a button, and it basically takes that web page and then does deep research, like deep Google searches using like very sophisticated, Google dorks, evaluates and can return back to you like, these things are true, these things are misleading, these things are false. And if you're making business decisions on that, or personal decisions, it's valuable to be able to have that kind of superpower. That's actually kind of the way I've mostly been describing these things when I talk about them, is I call them superpowers, like AI superpower. And they give you an unfair advantage if you've got the right ones and you use them in the right way.
Hey, if you take a look at my web presence online, it's safe to say that I'm a bit AI obsessed. I even have a podcast all about AI that you're watching right now. I've gone down multiple rabbit holes with AI and done countless hours of research on the newest AI tools every single week. Well, I've done it again, and I just dropped my list of my favorite AI tools. I've done all the research on what's been working for me, my favorite use cases, and more. So if you want to steal my favorite tools and use them for yourself, now you can. You can get it at the link in the description below. Now back to the show. Let's dive in and actually take a look at MindStudio and some of the stuff that you're building. If anybody who's listening on audio, we are going to be sharing this on YouTube as well, so you can go and check out what Dmitry's sharing. But I know you guys just rolled out a pretty new feature that works inside of Chrome, where you can build all these automations directly inside of Chrome. And so I thought it'd be kind of cool to show off some of the types of agents that you're building right now, and some of the like really simple workflows that you've built to, just make your life easier.
For sure. Yeah. So I assume you guys can see my screen here.
Yep, we're good.
So I've installed the Chrome extension. This thing is in alpha now, and soon it'll be in the App Store. It's been submitted. And it's here. I can drag it around. It can be collapsed or it can be expanded. And these are triggers for AI agents. So here's a TLDR AI agent. Here's an AI agent called What Is This? This one's called Alternatives, right? And I can trigger them, or I can, if I want to have these things collapsed, and I can click on this button and it gives me the side drawer, and in it you get, all the agents that are sort of available in our agent store. You get all the agents that you've created yourself. You've got agents that you've starred. So these are like your favorites. And so you can very quickly, again, take an agent and trigger it. And so like, what could we do here? Well, one thing we could do here, for example, is do like a TLDR. And so again, I can trigger it from here, or I could have triggered it from the extension right here that I've got. And it instantly, again, grabbed the content on this page. Let me see if I can expand it out here. And gave me this quick summary. And then this quick summary was just a quick AI model looking at this thing, and it did this and extracted these entities. We also have a thing called Who's Involved, which is sort of more sophisticated. It'll go grab the page, and it'll find like all the people and entities on that page and ask me like what people or entities I'd like to know more about. Okay, like this theoretical physicist. I can click this, and this is going to kick off like a really sophisticated workflow that could take, in this case, I think takes about 2 minutes to run, which is, again, generating Google search queries over here. Again, you can sort of see it working. Generating Google search queries, executing those Google search queries on Google News, Google Images, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to create a report for us. And by the way, we don't have to wait. We can say, notify me when finished. And this thing is going to send me an email with this like really sophisticated profile executive summary, of this person here that I've done. And again, we don't have to stay on this page. We can keep moving. So, here you are. And I've got a little thing over here where I've got a bunch of buttons. One of them is YouTube TLDR, right? I can click this thing. It's going to grab the transcript. It's going to process it, and it's going to give me a TLDR. Now, your video is only 33 minutes here. And so I could have watched it and, 2 times speed, that's nothing at all. But some videos are, 3.5 hours,
Right.
And so again, this thing like can pick out like things, and again, all of it is also fine tunable by me. And so if I want my TLDRs to be different, I simply go and I edit this AI agent that I have, and then I can use it.
Gotcha.
See it and manipulate it for that. Here you go.
So many of these things, like when you were just showing, you had the little like sort of tray on the right side where you had a whole bunch of little like apps that you built.
Right.
So my understanding is most of those apps are like pre-built templates that are available in MindStudio that you can just add to your sidebar. But then also you can create your own, and you can also modify some of the ones that are already pre-built. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So again, if people sign up and they don't yet have anything started, they haven't built anything, they will see, on this agents tab, they'll see these agents.
Oh, it's almost like a little like app store for agents.
It's like an app store for agents. Exactly. Sorry, these ones right here. And there are more agents coming. Again, this is an alpha now. Soon you should expect hundreds, beyond that, thousands. And then you can, on any one of these agents, you can open it up, and it's got sort of a detail page, and it tells you how much it costs to run this. So on average, about 6 cents. In inference, this one takes about 45 seconds. But again, it returns back like these really awesome, summaries, like reports in a sense, that are publishable, that are shareable. They're like pieces of content in a sense with just clicking a button. And so you can run it right from here, or you can run it from the extension, from here, or opening it up here and running it here. So you can just click a button, YouTube TLDR, and run it. Now, the other thing we can do with these things is if you click here, you can say make a copy. And when you make a copy, you've just made a copy of that agent, and you have access to like all of it's not code that you're
like forking it, basically.
You're forking it, exactly. Yeah. And so here, I'm going to collapse this little right-hand drawer here. So agents are made out of these things called workflows, and these workflows are basically, these things where you can add these little nodes to. And so it's got a start block. And so let me make this a little bit smaller. Let's take a look at what this one is doing. It's actually quite simple. It's got a start block. You can configure the start block to, again, how does it run? These things can be run on demand, meaning you trigger them manually. They can be run on any kind of a schedule, right, that you specify. They can be run by, if you click email here, it gives you this custom email address. And whenever you send an email to this email address, it takes that as input and triggers this workflow and passes it variables. Or you can trigger it as a browser extension, which is what this was. And then you get access to these launch variables, as we call them. So when this thing gets called by the browser extension passes it the URL, the metadata, which is, the encode the metadata, name, description, image, etc. The full text, which is visible to the user, so the stuff you can see on the page. If user is selecting anything, highlighting anything, or right-clicking anything, it gets passed in this user selection variable, and then like all the raw HTML, CSS, JavaScript behind the scenes. So it grabs that. And that's available to us. And we can reference that using variables. And here we've got different blocks that you can add. And I'm going to go here. You can see there's many different types of blocks, like fetch YouTube captions. Like this is how you can grab the captions from a YouTube channel, or fetch the channel and metadata about it, or fetch all the comments.
Or this is all if you want to customize it, right? Like I assume like a regular person would not have to do all this.
Capabilities.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of pre-built ones that you can just use by default. You can go build one completely from scratch if you want, or you could take one that already exists and sort of fork it and iterate on it yourself.
And use it, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, so this is like one. Let's take a look at like another one here quickly. Let's take a look at this researcher that we have that people love. This one takes an average of almost 4.5 minutes to run. Again, you can run it from here. If you run it from here, it says, what do you want to research? And so I can say, I want to research Matt Wolf, and just go off and do the research there. Or I can run it from, Chrome extension, right? And so I could be whatever on CNN, and then I can click this thing and I can go to researcher and run it from here. And then again, it's going to do what that, people indexer did too, which is like grab a bunch of things off this page and say, which of these do you want me to research? And it'll present you like a menu. Emerging technologies in AI, investigating recent developments in artificial intelligence, blah, blah, blah. I can click this and this thing is going to kick off this like very sophisticated workflow. Let's take a look at what that workflow is actually doing. Again, I'm going to say make a copy, which means work this. You make a copy of this. And so, as I said, these things are made up of these workflows. The main workflow here, right here, is called main, and it's made up of these automations. So what is this thing doing? Well, when it gets triggered, it gets passed into it a variable called request. That's the user's request. And then the first thing it does is it calls a model, in this case, 3.5 Sonnet. And again, we support over 50 AI models with new ones being added all the time. All the major providers, including DeepSeek and Google, OpenAI, Meta, Google, Mistral, whatever. They're all multimodal. So you can call any model you want. And then in this case, it says, analyze this request and figure out a plan to use Google search in order to do that, and then store that plan in a variable called plan. And then move on to the next step. And in this step, it says, here's the plan that was made here. Using this plan, create a bunch of Google search queries to be able to research this plan. And then it uses another type of block, which is a run workflow block, that triggers another workflow, and this workflow called run query, and it passes into it an array of queries. And then it runs this workflow here over and over again and searches Google, and then comes back with all of those, all of the data from that, and then it normalizes everything, and then it generates the report, and then it runs another workflow to generate images. And again, and then it outputs this awesome report and emails it to you, and it's available for you whenever you want. And so again, you don't need to know any of this stuff in order to use it, right? In order to use it, you just push this button and say run, and it creates the stuff for you. But you can edit it and do it.
Well, it's funny because it's like whenever like OpenAI or Google or Microsoft or one of these big companies like makes a change to their terms of service, it's news, right? People are like tweeting about it and things like that. And it's like, you can actually have one that watches for changes of terms of service on AI related companies to see if now all of a sudden this company is going to spy on me, even though they told me they weren't originally.
Right.
That is a clear, simple to do use case, trivial, easy to build. You can build it in 5 minutes doing this. Okay, so I'm on your profile on Twitter, X. And so these things can be contextual. And so when I'm on Twitter, the agents that are relevant to Twitter can show up right here. And so one way I could get to know Matt Wolf is by going through and like spending a bunch of time like looking through your profile, but ain't nobody got time for that. And so I've got a thing called Profile Analyzer, and it just grabs that, and the AI is going to analyze you. Like it pulls up a bunch of things, your primary focus, sort of content themes, content types, key behavioral insights, So again, like a bunch of stuff about you. I'm in control. I can modify this thing to do something different because I want different types of things. Or there might be conversations that are happening on Twitter. And again, I can try to like read through this and understand this thing, but that's really hard to do. But I can just click this little button, which is X Conversation Analyzer, and it can do like all this work for me. It give me, again, these TLDRs. And these are artifacts. Like I can share them, I can save them, I can send them, I can do whatever I want with them in order to be able to do that.
Yeah. One cool thing too that I don't think you mentioned, but I know I've seen it playing around with MindStudio, is that the sort of visual workflow that you were showing, like what you've got on the screen right now, these visual workflows, you can actually use natural language and tell it what workflow you want, and using natural language, it will actually go and automate the building of those workflows as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, again, we can make yours here by saying create agent. There's actually, I wouldn't even use this to do it, but like for somebody novice, they could do it. So again, you can start from a blank project, or you can start from this thing called MindStudio Architect, where it says, what do you want me to build? And I'll build it for you. By the way, this MindStudio Architect was built using MindStudio. It's a MindStudio agent whose job it is to be the architect of MindStudio. So it knows how MindStudio works. It knows all the blocks that MindStudio has. It knows the kind of the design patterns that MindStudio prefers. And then if you tell it what to do, it says, I know how to follow these instructions. And so again, we could say every day, monitor my competitor's website and check terms of service. When they change, notify me with a summary of changes. It seems pretty straightforward. I don't need to, again, you can do that and say generate. And this thing is going to go off and it's going to create a plan of like how it's going to build this thing, because there's a bunch of ways you could build it. You can say, I don't like this plan, choose another plan. Or you can say, great, this plan looks good enough for me, push go, and then it'll build like all of the scaffolding for you. And many times like runs, meaning the first time it builds it, it runs well and you don't need to like fix anything. So that happens. Sometimes, it makes like some weird error and you got to like troubleshoot it a little bit, right? And we've got a little button where you can ask people for help, and they can that are, more experienced than you in doing it. So you can do that. But while it's doing that, let's open up another tab. And I just want to start another one here quickly. I'm going to show like kind of the simplest one that I think will help people grok this maybe better than like some of these ones that I've been showing. So I'm just going to go to build. I'm going to say create new agent. And this thing is going to spin up my development. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to say open blank project. So the system prompt is, you can add these or not. I tend not to do them, but if you want to do them, this is again sort of tells the system like what you want it to be. You can write it yourself, or again, you can use another agent that we have here. Okay, so let's build the Chrome extension-y thing. Okay, I'm going to go here, start. I'm going to say, browser extension. Again, we now get these variables. I'm going to say plus, and I'm just going to say generate text. This means call a model. In this case, I'm just going to change a model just to change it. Why not? We're going to use Gemini 1.5 Flash, and we're going to tell this model, create a TLDR of this. Okay, and then in double curly braces, that's as complex as it gets. We're going to pass it this variable here that we get again called full text. Full text means the full text of the page from which we called this. There it is. It's case sensitive. And here we can either display it to user or save it to variables. I'm just going to leave it display to user because we're done. We just made this agent that does a TLDR. Again, if we want it to be fancier and we want to specifically say how we want it to create the TLDR, what should it look for? What should it bias for? Like you just add this in plain English over here, right? But and then, you can click here and you can give it a name. I'm just going to call this Matt's TLDR. And then you can, give it an icon if you want, and then you can just say publish. And so again, we just built this thing. It exists. It's got a URL. We can run it. We can run it manually and just give it a URL, but that's no fun. That's not how we built it, right? We want to run it from whatever, this one here. And so we can go here and we can open our extension right here. And like a fast way to find it, because I've got so many of them, is to simply do a search, Matt's TLDR, and then I can just run it from here. And again, we built this thing in less than a minute?
Right.
Here, and this says Microsoft was made a major breakthrough in this. Okay, so that's not a very good TLDR. We could go back and say, no, like these are specific things that I want out of my TLDR and do that. And again, I'm not going to demonstrate that because anyone can do that. You can play around and then you hit save and you go back and you test it again, or you go back here and test it again. It's that easy to sort of like iterate on these things to create custom tools for yourself.
You could go test different models too. Maybe Gemini 1.5 Flash tends to give you smaller responses, where if you were to use, GPT 4.0 or Sonnet 3.5, it'll give you a much deeper response.
Absolutely. In fact, let's do that. Let's use Sonnet here instead. And we're going to publish that, and we're going to rerun the exact same thing. And again, it's super easy to rerun these things. I should take the one we just made so I don't have to look for it. Matt's TLDR, I can click on this thing, and over here I can say add to start. Okay, so this one didn't do much more on the TLDR, but you can change models there again. If you give it some more instructions, it doesn't matter. A much better job. Another way to get it to do stuff like that that's even better. And I can say generate prompt. Now hit the right thing. And I can say, we like to refer to this thing usually as assistant, but you can say anything you want, write it in any form you want. Assistant generates TLDRs for human when provided with content. And I could say from the web, or I can say content, whatever, and say generate. And this thing will go off and it'll generate the prompt that will be much more specific about what a TLDR should have. And that too will now bias the TLDR that we get on that. But the point is all of this stuff is really easy to do and play around with, right? And so again, let's go ahead and run this thing again. So we've got more workers here. There's our Matt's TLDR that we added. And so let's see what we get out of this TLDR generator. Now, didn't do much more on that. Okay, so we want to change that prompt. But you guys get it. Lots of things you can do here and play around with.
For sure. Now, what's up with the one that you started using the automation you use the natural language to build that one? Let's check on that one.
Okay, so here's what it did. It built the terms of service change monitor. And again, this is the plan. Automatically monitors competitors' terms of service, page for changes, analyzing differences, sending email notifications. It says it's going to take, as input the URL in a notification email. And then, here are the variables it's going to use. It doesn't need any custom functions that it needs to write. This is what the automation is going to look like. It's going to scrape the terms of service. It's going to clean and normalize content, check if it's the first run, or if it's got data about it already, save the version, end the first run, analyze. And we say, great, whatever this means, sounds good to me. And then you say go, and it'll go off and it'll build that entire workflow. And we'll get that workflow. And again, it might work with we obviously need to put in the URL because we didn't tell it what URL. We could have told it what URL. Okay, so workflow generation is complete. I can, watch a YouTube tutorial on how to use it, or we can close and start editing it. Again, it built the system prompt. It built the automations for us that we can then look at and we can edit. And so this is using our scrape URL block. And it's taking in here, again, a variable called URL that we need to define. So here it says this thing is scheduled and it gets past these launch variables. Or if it's the same URL, we can just put it in here explicitly. So we can say, cnn.com/terms of service. You get the point of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So Dmitry, I'm kind of wondering, the more you talk about this, so long term, I'm curious, how does this, obviously for OpenAI, agents is going to be very, very important. And so I'm kind of curious, is your thesis that even if they really, really focus on agents and of course they get amazing at it, that there's still going to be a benefit of having a community of people sharing their different use cases and different templates? Is that kind of the idea behind MindStudio?
Yeah, look, we believe that models will continue to get better and better. And certainly model providers like OpenAI will have sort of consumer interfaces along with API interfaces. And those consumer interfaces, today are primarily conversational, so ChatGPT, and it's got access to, tools, function calling, et cetera. And in your chat, you can sort of go back and forth with it and it does stuff for you. And there's a lot of use cases for that where ad hoc, you want to do something and you do that. But for, many other things, and I propose most other things, you will say, well, I wish something just I could build it and it just ran and it did these things, monitor Google Trends. I don't want to constantly ask ChatGPT to do it for me or talk to it. right? I want it to only notify me, by the way. It does it in the background. It should only nudge me if it found something interesting. Most of the time it won't. And so it should just be there in the background. I've got a dashboard. I can see these things running. I can see what's scheduled, etc. As for like the capabilities of the models themselves to sort of be at a place where, again, you kind of don't need anything like this, and you just tell them, I want you to be this thing, and it sort of does it. Again, there I propose that I struggle from a product side to see how you would sort of have the human feel enough in control without sort of creating something that they could understand. Again, you might generate the workflow for them, just like our architect did. But I think humans still being able to say, oh, I want to put like a checkpoint in here where you're running a
modify how it works and
except for this, or I want to be able to change this in some way and see it. I didn't show you guys our debugger, which is awesome, like extraordinarily powerful. So like our instrumentation for like building and running these things is dramatically deeper than any of the model providers themselves offer. And so if you're going to build anything with models, we think this is the no-brainer way to be. It's the most instrumented, it's the fastest, it's the easiest. Gives you access to all those models. Models go up and down. Like,
that's what I was going to say. It feels like that's a big advantage too, right? Is like being agnostic. Because I mean, in the last month we had DeepSeek come out. Now Grok's amazing. There are going to be a lot of options out there.
Well, and as you're building these workflows, again, you want to, for each step where you want to use intelligence, you might want to call a different model, right? Where, Gemini 1.5 Flash is super fast at being able to do a bunch of stuff, but it's not a very good writer. Like Claude is a much better writer. So you might get the Gemini to do a bunch of analysis, data collection, all of that, and then sort of hand that off to Claude to put together and do, or like generating images or like whatever else is doing here. So like this ability to analyze different models for each part of the step, use the right model based upon quality, latency, so low latency and cost.
Yeah, and you probably could suggest that eventually too, right? Like this model is better for writing here. You might want to use this one. Yeah.
Today it's like suggested in those like detail pages that each one of them has. You can read them. But sort of where I was going is like, these models aren't reliable. These model providers are still building their infrastructure. They've got a bunch of usage. So they go down periodically, in fact, quite frequently. And if you're just like standardized on only OpenAI and all you've got is there, you're kind of stuck. Your AI ain't doing anything. Here you can just fail over to any of these other models that could also do the job. They might not be preferred. They might be a little bit more expensive. They might be a little bit slower, but at least you're not down in your workings. Like all of those kinds of things become really important when you get serious about like building these things.
So are those like redundancy mechanisms? Are those built in already? Like try Claude 3.5. If that doesn't work, then go do GPT 4.0 or whatever?
Today, it doesn't automatically do it. So like it can notify you that models are down, which we do. And then you can manually go do that. But coming soon, it will do it intelligently and just like do that for you.
Yeah, that's cool. Gotcha. Like here's my tier list, for writing, for coding, for whatever.
Yeah, all the infrastructure is there. You can now just manually choose a different one. It takes 10 seconds. But soon it will be autonomous for sure.
Yeah, I did have a question. This was something you showed off on the screen quite a while ago, earlier in the conversation, where you showed, all right, it's going to cost like 6 cents to run this, right? How does that work? Is it like a bring your own API key? Is it like you guys bill based on the usage? Where does that 6 cents come from?
Yeah, so you don't need to bring your own API key. Although if you want to call your own models, we allow, again, function calling and API calling. So you can call any model, including on-premise, private cloud, etc. The vast majority of people that use MindStudio use our API keys that are built in, so you don't need any API keys. So you instantly have access to all of the models from all of their providers on our billing. And we simply pass the costs on to you based on usage.
Okay.
Yeah? We take a tiny markup, 2.9%, and then it reduces with scale and goes down to like 0.15% of overage over what the model providers charge us. It's kind of like Stripe. Like,
gotcha.
We kind of see ourselves very much in that light. We're sort of like what Stripe is to payments, or Twilio is to telephony, or Mux is to video. MindStudio is to intelligence.
Do you ever consider doing it more like Cursor, where like you have like a monthly, and that's basically baked in, like you're kind of assuming they're going to use the API some amount with some limit, and then you go over that. It's like, okay, you got to either pay us more or use your own API keys.
Great. Well, I'll break the news on your show here. We're about to add that tier.
I can predict the future.
Yeah, depends on when this publishes. It might already be there. So yes, exactly. That makes sense. And so I wanted to mention sort of another thing. So we've got this, Matt, as you noticed, this is like an app store. Mm-hmm. And these agents are put in there today by us. We created all of the agents that are available for you to use. You just pay metered usage for them. They're free to use, but other than metered usage, you can make copies of them and modify them and launch new ones, etc. And we will keep adding more to it. The other thing that we're doing is we're opening this up to the world, just like the App Store is opened up to the world, that people can show up and say, I've got some use cases that I think are awesome and that lots of people are going to want. I'm going to build them in MindStudio. And again, as you can see, it's easy to build. And then I'm going to submit them to the store, and I want to make them available to other people to just use. But eventually also, like charge for them, obviously, we'll implement that as well. And so we're actually looking for people that want to show up and start building these things. And we're venture backed. And so we're willing to pay like bounties. So there's an opportunity for enterprising folks to get in early and fill up this app store with all kinds of amazing utilities that now can be triggered from a browser extension. If you're building good ones, we've got, praise and money to make your life better. And we're also looking to hire people full time to do this. So there's like great opportunities for people to start building these things and taking advantage of this.
When you say app store, is there going to be like a revenue share or?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll be able to charge for these things, and you'll be able to earn revenue from the work that you've done. Yeah. By the way, people are already building these things and putting them behind paywalls, which you can do. And so there are entire businesses that have been started that simply build a bunch of MindStudio AI agents, put them behind a paywall, and then charge monthly access to all of those agents.
Yeah. I remember early on, I think when we first talked, 18, 19 months ago or something, that was kind of like the original sort of selling point of MindStudio is go build agents and then sell access to them.
Yeah, so people took us up on that and are doing it, and so yeah, you can make money with them already. By the way, we also now have over 150 integration partners that make money by, again, they're experts in MindStudio, and they are building AI agents for organizations. So we've got over 150,000 of these things that have been built and deployed. Again, some are just like experiments; they're toys, but many are like mission critical, really important AI agents that sit at government agencies. His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the British IRS, uses MindStudio in recruiting. ServiceNow uses it in sales, demo automation. A company called Advanced Local, which is a giant publishing company, has got over 80 of these running that are automating newsrooms and newspaper publishing. And so some of those are built by the people inside these companies. Others, these companies hire our partners to do professional services work and build them. So again, there have been entire actually agencies that have like started up simply to do MindStudio implementation for organizations that want the skill. That's where all the budgets are flowing. In enterprises, they're all flowing towards this like AI digital transformation.
Right.
And we make it really easy for them to get this like giant ROI out of very little work,
Super cool. Now with the little like Chrome extensions, any plans to make that available on mobile as well? Like, will I be able to be reading a news article on my phone and do the same kind of things?
Yeah, we're gonna have a native app, probably I'm guessing in a quarter, which will allow you to basically make it a shared target, so you can like intent out from any application to any of these agents and get callbacks on that. So like it instantly sort of enables anything that can do share intents to now have agents available for it. There are some, I can't sort of announce them yet, but there are medium-sized social networks that are starting to integrate MindStudio agents into their interfaces. So they will be within their native mobile apps. There will be buttons on their posts that allow you to fact check things or like do other things. And those are simply MindStudio agents that are doing that work. And so you'll see, certainly a lot more of that kind of stuff that you can do.
Awesome. Well, cool. This has been a really, really interesting conversation. I mean, I love actually getting to see all this stuff in person. I've been playing around with MindStudio for a little over a year now and have messed with it quite a bit, but it's always really cool to see how like the person who's actually building the tools would actually use it as well. So I really appreciate all the insights and you showing off how to use it. So the website is mindstudio.ai. Is there anywhere else people can follow you? You on X, you on LinkedIn? Where's the best place to sort of get to know you?
I'm on all of them. I prefer LinkedIn, and please feel free and add me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, Dmitry Shapiro. That's probably the best place to follow me, but I'm also on X and Facebook and Reddit and everywhere else. You got to be everywhere, right?
Very cool. Well, thank you once again for joining us today. This has been a really cool conversation. Anybody that's listening, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on YouTube for more interesting conversations like this, especially if you want to get the visual element. And if you prefer audio, you like listening in your car or while out walking your dog, we're available wherever you listen to podcasts. So subscribe to us there. And thanks again, Dmitry. It's been an amazing episode.
Great to chat.